Let us embark on a profound journey into the core concepts and perspectives that shape human existence, focusing our attention today on the extraordinary philosophical framework of Friedrich Nietzsche. Emerging from 19th century Germany, this monumental figure stands as a profoundly radical intellect within the annals of Western thought. He relentlessly challenged the cultural norms of his time, launching fierce critiques against conventional European values and religious dogma, reserving his most piercing scrutiny for Christian doctrines. His personal journey was marked by relentless adversity, defined by lifelong physical ailments and profound alienation from contemporary academic circles, right up until his creative brilliance was abruptly extinguished. This tragic turning point occurred in 1889, when a total psychological collapse incapacitated him. According to historical accounts, upon witnessing a carriage driver brutally lashing a horse in the street, the anguished thinker rushed to shield the animal, embracing its neck before falling unconscious to the pavement, a state of mental ruin from which he would never return. While early medical opinions attributed his decline to syphilis, modern scholars frequently dispute this, suggesting instead that a slowly expanding brain tumor triggered severe manic-depressive episodes, recurring psychosis, and ultimate dementia preceding his passing in 1900. Throughout his active writing career, commercial triumph entirely eluded him, with annual book sales frequently lingering in the single digits. Only after his mortal departure did his radical literature truly ignite the public imagination and achieve widespread global recognition. Following his demise, his sister Elizabeth seized control of his literary estate, maliciously manipulating his unpublished notes to align with her own virulent pro-Nazi ideologies. Consequently, history wrongfully smeared the philosopher as an ideological godfather of fascism, despite his profound and well-documented revulsion toward anti-Semitic bigotry. In truth, his authentic writings express deep admiration for Jewish communities, praising their immense intellectual vitality and invaluable contributions to the cultural fabric of Europe. During the brief, feverish window following his collapse that preceded 11 years of silence, he drafted a series of bizarre correspondences now known as the Madness Letters, affixing signatures like Dionysus or the Crucified. By invoking the Greek deity of wine and ecstasy, he symbolized an absolute triumphant affirmation of existence, whereas his reference to Christ honored the figure he deemed the sole authentic practitioner of the faith, whose genuine message perished at Calvary. Ultimately, this dichotomy served not to vilify Jesus, but to condemn the institutional church for rejecting earthly reality in favor of a fictitious paradise, a mindset he viewed as a cowardly denial of living. He theorized that human anguish stems from our relentless habit of splitting experiences into acceptable and unacceptable categories, thereby relinquishing our internal joy to unpredictable external forces. To combat this vulnerability, he championed the concept of Amor Fati, urging humanity to passionately embrace every facet of destiny and transform into resolute affirmers of reality. He laid the foundation for these radical ideas in his magnum opus, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, later expanding his provocative theories in Beyond Good and Evil, intentionally directing his demanding prose toward a select, deeply intellectual audience, rather than the casual reader. Beyond traditional philosophy, he functioned as a pioneering psychologist, elevating the discipline to the pinnacle of the sciences and introducing foundational theories like the will to power. By employing sharp psychological analysis, he dismantled the prevailing dogmas of his era, exposing the fragility of widely accepted truths and urging us to break free from the chains of suffocating traditions. His visionary roadmap for human emancipation is anchored in several intertwined principles, including self-overcoming, perspectivism, the pursuit of human nobility, the will to power, the eternal recurrence, and the ultimate realization of the overman. A central pillar of his worldview is Selbstüberwindung, a transformative process of self-overcoming, wherein individuals channel their rawest emotional energies into powerful creative actions. He maintained that confronting the harshness of reality is mandatory. Agony should not be dodged, but rather conquered to fuel our personal evolution. When we construct a sterile, frictionless environment to hide from discomfort, we merely trap ourselves in a shallow, counterfeit existence that offers no genuine liberation. To truly savor existence, you must embrace its darkest, most treacherous aspects alongside the beautiful, recognizing that human nature is elevated by its internal demons just as much as its virtues. Because there is a 100% probability that you will encounter profound agony between birth and death. Avoiding this inevitable sorrow in pursuit of hollow comfort only stunts your development. Consider the arduous trek up a towering peak. The journey guarantees exhaustion and distress, yet only those brave enough to endure the brutal ascent will ever behold the breathtaking vistas waiting at the summit. Building on this relentless pursuit of reality, his doctrine of Perspectivism argues that all so-called facts are merely interpretations, filtered through our individual lenses of experience. Consequently, he dismantles the illusion of absolute objective knowledge, insisting that all philosophical frameworks are inherently subjective tools, rather than universal endpoints. By stripping away these rigid certainties, he prepares the intellectual landscape for the arrival of free spirits, a revolutionary generation of thinkers ready to perceive the universe through entirely unprecedented paradigms. Such individuals possess no desire to force their personal realities upon the rest of the world, unlike the hidden agendas driving dogmatic movements. Instead, they exist as renegades who stand apart from the consensus, holding convictions that belong entirely to them. While society will undoubtedly greet these nonconformists with locked barriers and profound isolation, Nietzsche champions them as the ultimate embodiment of truly emancipated minds. The philosopher argues that the concept of Vornehmheit, or human nobility, cannot be found in mere academic understanding. Intellectual grasp is never a static possession. Rather, the thinker must actively inhabit their insights, proving their worth by the sheer volume of reality they can withstand. True elevation for these liberated individuals stems from intentionally stepping back from the masses, recognizing the inherent hierarchy among individuals, and relentlessly pursuing exceptionalism. He defines this dynamic as the pathos of distance, illustrating the profound gulf that segregates exceptional figures from entirely unremarkable populations. Beyond the decline of single individuals, this profound thinker directs his scrutiny toward the broader decay of entire civilizations. He champions formidable, life-embracing figures not purely to glorify them, but to spark a cultural renaissance that revitalizes society. Yet, his ambition never encompasses the universal salvation of our entire species. He focuses strictly on uplifting those who possess the inherent capacity for greatness. He readily accepts that the compliant masses will remain unchanged, seeking only to lure exceptional minds away from that conformity, fully anticipating the inevitable resentment of the collective. The central inquiry defining his entire philosophical journey revolves around discovering how we should navigate existence, or, more intensely, how you and I can manage to simply survive it. He views reality as a turbulent storm, utterly devoid of intrinsic guidance or permanence, dismissing any notion that existence holds an undeniable, objective meaning. Nevertheless, humanity fundamentally relies on principles. Surviving without deeply rooted ideals is a practical impossibility. Therefore, since the universe offers no external compass, yet we require one to function, an internal engine for generating meaning must exist within us, forging the very ideals that structure our reality. It is the courageous, elevated character who assumes the responsibility of forging these new paradigms. By celebrating their own intrinsic qualities, these figures practice an ethics rooted in self-exaltation. A robust belief in your own potential, an unapologetic sense of pride, and a deep-seated skepticism toward the concept of altruism are all hallmarks of this elevated mindset. Consequently, contemporary humanity must forge its own ethical frameworks in a landscape stripped of theological certainty, constantly guarding against the descent into nihilism and the paralyzing assumption that existence lacks all significance. This existential precariousness forms the backdrop for his iconic declaration regarding the divine, which, as you might observe, functions less as a victory cry and more as a somber warning. While dismantling the entrenched belief systems compiled by countless civilizations over millennia was a daunting prospect, he deemed it an absolute necessity. He famously categorized this monumental paradigm shift as a revaluation of all values. A transformation of this magnitude, he hypothesized, would ultimately propel our species toward a revolutionary phase of existence beyond current limitations, culminating in the emergence of the Overman, a concept we will explore in due course. In declaring that God had perished, the philosopher was diagnosing a cultural shift, wherein a deity that once dominated human existence had been reduced to a mere peripheral interest for the modern individual. While congregations and faith persist, the divine has lost its authority to dictate the trajectory of our civilization, rendering it culturally obsolete. In this context, he identifies the Christian tradition as the quintessential embodiment of a slave morality, severely condemning the general populace for willingly sacrificing their intellect to intellectual subservience. This subjugated ethical framework inherently harbors a deep-seated bitterness toward the strengths and triumphs of the mighty. Conversely, true malice is recognized by this philosopher as a potent and perilous force, radiating a terrifying magnificence that commands immediate respect and prevents any dismissive mockery. From the perspective of the subjugated, it is this very peril that defines wickedness. Whereas within a master morality, true excellence is exactly what commands awe and trepidation. Relinquishing one's autonomy, dignity, and intellectual boldness inevitably paves the way to spiritual captivity. The superior ethical paradigm does not aim to tyrannize the weak, but rather focuses its energy on architecting novel philosophies and vitalities, standing in stark contrast to the subjugated mindset, which incorrectly labels the refusal to use strength as virtuous and the exercise of power as wicked. He contends that traditional religious doctrine stems entirely from a desire for docility, compliance, and blending seamlessly into an unquestioning flock. It represents a fundamental rejection of worldly existence, driven by an urgent desire to flee current hardships in exchange for a promised celestial eternity. Yet, as you navigate this philosophical landscape, it becomes apparent that stripping away comforting illusions brings us significantly closer to absolute reality. Throughout history, the vast majority of individuals have always preferred submission over the tremendous burden of leadership. Because our societies have actively bred compliance, the ordinary person now harbors a biological craving for direction and unquestionable commandments. If this collective urge to submit is pushed to its absolute limit, it guarantees a future entirely devoid of autonomous thinkers or capable leaders. Any manifestation of fierce individuality, the courage to operate in isolation, or a razor-sharp intellect, will inevitably be viewed as a profound societal danger. Consequently, any trait that elevates a person above the collective and unsettles their peers will be immediately condemned as malicious. Ultimately, he views these dogmatic traditions as a regressive anchor that humanity must actively outgrow and transcend to prevent the total degradation of our species. It twists the natural instincts of superior individuals toward ruinous self-doubt, transforming a passionate love for the tangible world into a venomous disdain for reality, thereby reducing our potential to a uniformly unremarkable breed. Within the pages of Beyond Good and Evil, Friedrich Nietzsche interrogates the very foundation of our moral frameworks, questioning the inherent worth of our cherished principles. He challenges you to consider the correct vantage point from which to evaluate these ethical constructs, and asks what truly endows our existence with significance. The philosopher investigates the reasons behind our persistent need to assign a grand design to our personal journeys, rather than surrendering to the void of complete nihilism. According to his philosophy, humanity desperately holds on to various concepts of a flawless, alternate reality because we find our current existence deeply unsatisfactory. To escape this discomfort, we fabricate utopian dimensions, ranging from the ethereal realm of forms proposed by Plato to the heavenly promises of Christianity, or the concept of the illusory self found within Hinduism. Nietzsche argued that these idealized realms are nothing more than fabricated coping mechanisms designed by the human mind to make the harsh truths of our actual universe more palatable. This profound skepticism connects directly to his concept of perspectivism, prompting him to analyze the psychological roots of our societal virtues. He dissects the historical cultivation of seemingly noble traits like compassion, equity, and mutual assistance, revealing a darker underbelly beneath our ingrained moral judgments. If you peel back the layers of what society hastily labels as good or evil, you uncover a toxic brew of cowardice, vulnerability, self-delusion, and betrayal, all of which heavily infect the psychological state of contemporary humanity. The narrative shifts in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where the ancient Persian mystic emerges from a 10-year mountain exile, signaling the start of his descent back into society. Here, the philosopher introduces a trio of developmental phases necessary for mastering oneself: the camel, the lion, and finally, the child. From his perspective, every single one of you enters this world as a beast of burden, and tragically, the vast majority will perish in that same subservient state. Much like a tireless pack animal plodding forward without protest, the average individual navigates existence by silently shouldering the heavy expectations and demands imposed by the surrounding world. You might wonder what specific luggage weighs you down so heavily throughout your journey. The thinker posits that every societal dictate, every external command you have ever absorbed, acts as another crushing stone strapped to your spirit. Achieving genuine liberation requires you to violently cast off these accumulated expectations, reject historical traditions, and embrace your authentic nature. Only after successfully shedding this oppressive cargo can you evolve into the next formidable stage of spiritual development, the fierce and defiant lion. In this aggressive state, your primary adversary takes the form of an oppressive, dragon-like ruler named Thou Shalt, who stands as the ultimate obstacle blocking your path to absolute liberty. This monstrous entity glimmers with golden armor, where each individual scale represents centuries of inherited dogmas and unyielding commands. Slaying this beast demands immense inner strength and the audacity to pronounce the sacred no, forcefully declaring your autonomy against all outside pressures, which clears the way for the ultimate transformation into the child. A perfectly liberated mind, according to the author, mirrors an infant engrossed in a game, encountering the universe with fresh eyes and unbridled fascination. Completely unshackled from pre-existing moral codes and societal regulations, this youthful spirit possesses the unique ability to forge its own profound significance from scratch. After utilizing the sacred no to obliterate the oppressive past, this newborn consciousness gleefully declares the sacred yes, deeply and enthusiastically embracing the totality of existence. Beyond this metamorphic triad, the wandering prophet delivers three foundational doctrines: the will to power, the philosophical concept of the eternal recurrence, and the ultimate pursuit of the Overman. The author posits that a fundamental driving force permeates the very fabric of reality. Observing biological life reveals an endlessly turbulent cycle of generation, destruction, and the constant struggle for dominance. This intrinsic will to power dictates the evolutionary trajectory and survival of all living things, serving as the essential catalyst for any entity to reach its maximum inherent potential. He firmly establishes this driving ambition as the core mechanism of the universe, directly rejecting Arthur Schopenhauer and his theories centered merely on bare survival or the passive accumulation of facts. Information must serve a vibrant function. You acquire wisdom not to hoard it on a mental shelf, but to actively breathe life into it through intense personal experience. This unyielding urge for mastery is woven into the very fabric of our identity, motivating even our most microscopic behaviors, and it remains a constant, pulsing force that you must consciously harness rather than allow to atrophy. If you could strip away all the complex psychological motivations driving human behavior, you would find this singular, unrelenting desire for ascendancy lying at the foundation. More crucially, the philosopher stressed that channeling this energy is intimately connected to the process of actualizing your most authentic self. It represents an unfiltered avenue for personal expression and continuous evolution, ensuring you remain the master of your fate rather than a servant to external circumstances, acting as the paramount engine of human progression. The German visionary advocated for the creation of a completely novel moral compass, one that requires you to passionately embrace the entirety of existence, which includes wholeheartedly welcoming tragedy, agony, and destruction alongside joy. He suggested that the ultimate spiritual triumph is not securing a place in a mythical heaven, but developing the willingness to endure the exact same earthly journey on an infinite loop. This terrifying yet liberating concept, named the eternal recurrence, serves as the ultimate test for a truly robust soul. It demands that you do not merely tolerate your fate, but fiercely desire its exact repetition for all eternity. When the prophet Zarathustra attempts to share these profound revelations with the masses gathered in the marketplace, his solemn words are met with mocking laughter from an audience that mistakes him for a mere traveling entertainer. In response to this profound mediocrity, the author forged the ideal of the Ubermensch, or the Overman, standing in stark contrast to the pitiful last man. This latter figure represents the lowest common denominator, a comfortable, undignified creature huddled securely within the mindless herd, instinctively hating the radical excellence that the Overman embodies. This elevated being represents the ultimate sovereign of his own soul, having completed the agonizingly difficult task of absolute self-conquest. Because genuine joy is derived from the sensation of expanding one's capability and successfully shattering obstacles, the Overman experiences the most profound ecstasy, thereby becoming the walking vindication of human existence itself. Reaching this summit of personal evolution means transcending ordinary limitations, fiercely conquering every hardship, and joyously greeting every single challenge the universe dares to hurl in your direction. According to the author, the philosopher's flamboyant prose and unconventional approach act as a kind of intellectual stimulant. This provocative style pushes you to constantly question the absolute validity of the core beliefs you hold regarding humanity and the universe. Typically, you might view yourself as an individual simply striving for a respectable existence, directing your actions toward goals that align with standard societal and cultural norms. In doing so, you accept certain indisputable truths and bind yourself, along with those around you, to a multitude of ethical duties. However, from Nietzsche's perspective, securing purpose in your existence is never a matter of stumbling upon a hidden reality. Instead, it requires the active forging of your own destiny. Consequently, the concept of the Overman represents the ultimate truth that humanity must strive to embody. Through embracing core tenets like the overman, the will to power, and self-overcoming, along with choosing to live dangerously, practicing Amor Fati, and accepting the eternal recurrence, the philosopher ultimately constructed his own profound justification for living.